Yeah. Oh, hi. Are we
Yes.
good?
Yes.
All right. Hello. Before we even start, we want to apologize. If you hear a lawnmower, there's a lawnmower going outside. And there's nothing we can do about it. It started like right as we went live, and it's very aggravating, but if you hear that, we apologize. There's nothing we can do about it. We have a bit of a better mic, so it picks up more sound. Hopefully it'll be over in a few. But hello. Welcome, good morning, good time zone. Welcome to today's episode of Books by Brunch. We have our special guest, Jer's cat, Moxie, with us. And today we're going to be looking at the strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Yippee!
Say something. Come on. Take a picture of her at least.
We are loud. Okay. I was just about to say, can we be heard? But we absolutely can be. I'm lurking. Oh, the lawnmower might have stopped. It's still...
Did you get a good picture of her?
I tried to.
Yeah. Okay.
Alright.
Do we need to turn ourselves down or
No,
anything?
you need to change our pronouns, because I am not Jade.
Okay, Mr. Big Shot.
Imagine sister. We actually don't have our Coco. We're a little scatterbrained. today, but we don't have our cocoa, unfortunately, but I do have my water. Hope everyone is doing
We have
well.
something more important than cocoa, so.
You mean Moxie?
Yeah.
She's gonna start flipping out soon, I think. She doesn't look happy.
That's just because you don't know how to read her.
Okay. Just finish my cocoa.
I'm not gonna
Excellent.
drink cocoa. We should do that. We could always make it in a minute, but...
Yeah. But when you make it, it gets too hot. And then we have to, like, let it sit for, like, an hour.
Yeah.
Because I don't like burning my tongue. My mouth is already all fucked up. Still in bed and cannot get cocoa. That's
Hello?
okay. That's okay. Is Funny Mike broken?
Funny Mike died.
Funny Mike died. Alright. Alright, so today we're doing Jekyll and Hyde. This is technically a novella, I believe.
I think so.
The mouse is being funny. I will say that. Yeah, do you see that?
Oh. Oh, no it's not.
Oh, now we're good. Okay. Are we? Where'd it go? There it is. Alright. Sorry for a little bit of tech difficulties. Stop that.
I just want to say, can you guys see the mouse on the screen right now? Do you want to know how I'm controlling that?
How?
The Switch controller.
What?
Yeah.
Bizarre. Alright. So, shall we begin?
Yes. A brief history of Mr. Robert Louis Stevenson.
And I'm going to send the link to this Gutenberg project link just so if people want to have it in front of them, they can have it in front of them.
This is just a... I forgot to do this earlier this morning. We, decided to look at the Tumblr thread. But anyway. Born in 1850 in Edinburgh, Scotland. Oh, acid reflux is going to be bad today. And he died age 44 in 1894. You hear that, Moxie? He was only 44 years old. You don't care. Time doesn't matter to you. All that matters is your food. He was the child of a lighthouse engineer and went to university at 17 to study lighthouse construction. And eventually he was like, I don't want to be an engineer. I want to work for the bar, the Scottish bar. Didn't look up what that was. And then he was like, religion's dumb. I don't want to be I want to be a Presbyterian. And then he rebelled against his parents and became a liberal bohemian. So that has showed up again. That showed up, what, 2 weeks ago with Frankenstein?
Yeah.
And abhorred alleged cruelties and hypocrisies of bourgeoisie respectability. So, he would have loved Twitter.
He didn't have a very long life.
No, he didn't. He didn't marry his cousin.
Oh, we're
So
winning.
we're winning
We
here.
won.
He may have married a MILF.
Oh.
So...
Well, you know, not his sister cousin.
Not his sister cousin and not a literal child.
Yeah.
So, I guess he's winning in that aspect.
Yeah.
I think he's the least likely to get canceled on Twitter.
You said he'd love Twitter. He's doing the canceling.
Yeah, he's doing the canceling. He wrote a number of books. He wrote Treasure Island. That's his probably his most famous one, aside from Jekyll and Hyde.
I didn't know he wrote that.
Yeah. He wrote a lot of romance novels, a lot of other things, and eventually he moved to the American Samoa, where he died of a stroke.
44?
Yeah. He wrote quite a few things, but I think most of them are pretty short.
Yeah, and we don't really talk about him as an author.
Yeah.
Which is bizarre, considering this, and I didn't know he wrote Treasure Island.
Yeah, that's what it says. I can reconfirm that. Make sure I'm not reading the wrong one.
But it looks like he led, like, a pretty tame life.
Yeah.
For, comparatively.
Treasure Island in 1882.
Yeah.
Wrote Jekyll and Hyde 4 years later.
Yeah, it looks like you led a relatively tame life in a short one, so that might be why we don't really talk about it as compared to, like, Edgar Allan Poe, whose life is a little mysterious in certain aspects, and, that kind of thing. But he wrote this, which is what we're going to be talking about today. So Jekyll and Hyde's pretty short. I wish I had brought my physical copy. But I don't have it with me, but we have this. My physical...
it's right there on the table.
Is it?
Yeah. Jasper's like, I wish I had brought this, and then
here.
9 times out of 10, I've already have it here.
Yeah. So my copy that I have is, like, 60 pages. About.
I read it as a free ebook, because you can get free ebooks. Mine clocked out at about 203 little iPhone pages. Actually, never mind. It has decided that it's now 253 little iPhone pages.
Okay. Well, it's still relatively short. It's definitely shorter than Frankenstein in any regard. Alright. Thing about Jekyll and Hyde is that it's also like Frankenstein in that it gets bastardized by the media a lot.
Oh, yeah.
There's always going to be kinds of retellings of it that may or may not be, faithful to the source material and kind of gets distorted over time.
There's a Jekyll and Hyde in Marvel Comics.
Really?
Yeah. He was in the Robbie Reyes Ghost Rider, actually. And in that, he consumes a pill and becomes gigantic and mean.
Which is... the gigantic part is the opposite of this.
Yeah. We'll get into that.
I always think of the Jekyll and Hyde from one of my favorite Halloween movies, Mad Monster Party. Mad Monster Party is a movie by the same people who did Rudolph and Year Without a Santa Claus and all those claymation. But anyway, Incredible Hulk. So we begin this first-person narrator. No, he's not a first-person narrator. I'm stupid. We have this lawyer named Mr. Utterson, who's kind of he kind of functions as our focal character. And he... Okay, hold on.
We should watch Mad Monster Party in the Discord.
I like it a lot. It's very dated, but it's fun.
Yeah.
So I haven't... You read this recently. I read this a little while ago. Basically takes place in London, and Mr. Utterson is a lawyer, and he's on a walk with his friend, and his friend, they walk by this house, this little hovel, and his friend, Mr. Enfield, is like, I saw something happen here. And he tells the story of this, it's right here. Coming home from some place at the end of the world, 3 o'clock on a black winter morning. He basically sees this girl get trampled. What are you looking at?
Public domain of Mad Monster Party. I'm checking if it is.
Oh, okay. He sees this girl get trampled by this little dwarvish dude. I think he describes him as dwarvish. It's just like... Yeah, this description is right, yeah. I saw 2 figures. One, a little man who was stumbling along eastward at a good walk, and the other, a girl of maybe 8 or 10. I didn't realize she was that young. Of 8 or 10 who was running at 3 in the morning?
Yeah.
Huh, okay. Um, a girl of maybe 8 or 10 who was running as hard as she was able to down across the street. The two ran into one another naturally enough at the corner, and then came the horrible part of the thing. For the man trampled calmly over the child's body and left her screaming on the ground. It sounds nothing to hear, but it was hellish to see. And then this description of this guy. Hee hee. It wasn't like a man, it was like some damn juggernaut. I gave a few holla, took to my heels, collared my gentleman, and brought him back to where there was already quite a group about the screaming child. He was perfectly cool and made no resistance, but gave me one look, so ugly that it brought out the sweat on me like running. The people who had turned were the girl's own family, and pretty soon the doctor, for whom she had been sent, put in it. Whoa! Hold on. Yes, okay. So this ugly dude just clotheslined this 8-year-old. And the thing is about this guy is he's so ugly. Where there's a certain description, but he's so ugly that everyone is like, well, he clotheslines this girl, and he's also ugly, so everyone's like, what the fuck, dude? Why'd you do that? And he is like, alright, if I give you guys money, you will leave me alone. It's basically what it comes down to. He goes into the door, which is where, Utterson and Enfield are walking by. He goes in and brings out a check. And they don't say it in this chapter, but the check is written in somebody else's name, or what they assume to be somebody else's name. Yeah, here it is. Name your figure, £100. Yeah, he pays the family off. Leave me alone. Here's money. He brings out a check. Yeah. He carried us but to the place at the door, whipped out a key, went in, and presently came back with a matter of £10 in gold and a check balance for the family. Signed with a name I cannot mention. And this is Enfield saying this. Oh, cellar door. Heat.
Cellar door.
Cellar door. So he writes them a check, and they're like, what the fuck? Leave me alone. Here's your check. I have every reason to believe it was a forgery. Not a bit of it. So, the check, we eventually will find out, spoiler alert, I guess, it's written in the name of Mr. Dr. Jekyll. What?
Does it actually say that? Hold on.
No.
You said Mr. Dr. Jekyll.
I know what I said. I know what I said. We don't find that out until the next chapter, but it's written in the name of Dr. Jekyll. And everyone's like, why is this, like, esteemed, like, doctor hanging out with this little weird dude? For my man was a fellow that nobody could have to do with, a really damnable man. There's one certain description that I think is in this chapter, and I'm just trying to find it. The Juggernaut description is a good one.
Yeah, that one's very interesting. Because a Juggernaut is a huge, like, behemoth kind of thing.
Yeah.
Unless the semantics mean something different at the time of writing this.
Ow.
I don't know what I did.
Sorry, something fell. Yeah, the Juggernaut.
I'll look up Juggernaut so we can get a clear term.
I never saw a circle of such hateful faces, but there was the man in the middle with a kind of black sneering coldness, frightened too, I could see that, but carrying it off, sir, really like Satan. So he's like, this man is the devil. This man is the devil.
Okay.
With the desire to kill him.
Interesting. It was way more popular back, bless you.
Thank you.
Back in his day. But by the time he had used it, it was actually pretty much out of style, the word. But it does mean a huge, powerful, and overwhelming force or institution. which is very interesting for...
what he is.
Yeah.
Wait.
Hold on. What is this thing?
Oh, here it is. It's this. This is the description I was looking for. But what were you?
There's something known as a juggernaut, and it's like a huge, just, siege device.
Oh.
Like...
what year?
Castle siege device. The car of Juggernaut, as depicted in 1851, illustrated the London Reading Book. Juggernaut cart in the Ulsor Temple Complex in Bangalore, India, around 1870. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah. So they find out that his name is... oh, thank you for the tier 1, and thank you, Henry, for the tier 3. I know I thanked you, but thank you guys for the subs. Have fun playing Fortnite. Fortnite Gamer. So yeah, they find out his name is Mr. Hyde. This guy's name is Mr. Hyde. And this description is what I was looking for, because this is like...
yeah.
the...
very interesting.
The penultimate description of what Mr. Hyde looks like.
Yeah.
He is not easy to describe. There is something wrong with his appearance, something displeasing, something downright detestable. I never saw a man I so disliked, and yet I scarce know why. He must be deformed somewhere. He gives a strong feeling of deformity, although I couldn't specify the point. He's an extraordinary looking man, and yet I really can name nothing out of the way. No, sir, I can make no hand of it. I can't describe him. And it's not want of memory, for I declare I can see him in this moment. What makes this description so important is he basically is like, I will now describe him. I cannot describe him. He's so indescribable, so out of this world, so extraordinary in just how he looks. But also at the same time, I can really name nothing out of the way. And this is one of my favorite Gothic tropes, is the idea of the uncanny. I love the idea of the uncanny, and we talked a little bit about it, I think, with Frankenstein.
I believe so, yes.
But, and, like, we still see the uncanny in, like, media today. It's this very, like, specific set of, you know, usually facial traits, but it can also just mean, it can also describe landscapes or locations, but usually it's for describing what people look like or what characters look like.
It's a very important part of modern discussions about AI and AI generation.
Oh, AI, yep. And also just like animation and like art in general. But it's when something is, in terms of like animation, it usually tends to mean something that's so realistic that it looks off. But when it comes to people or like things, locations, places, it has to do with familiarity, usually.
Yeah.
That something is, it's a little bit like the feeling of deja vu, of this place is so familiar, but I've never seen it before. It's that kind of like that, but something is off about it, just enough to be very unsettling. So, my understanding is that Hyde probably has a normalish looking face, but there's just something just off about how he looks that makes him look unsettling.
Okay.
It's like the uncanny valley.
I just want to, I like to look at specific language usage sometimes. This isn't, what are you, water?
Yeah.
This isn't, you know, he doesn't refer to uncanny specifically in this, but it's because uncanny was not used very much at the time of writing this.
No, but it's such a trope in Gothic lit.
If you actually look, it picked up the tiniest bit of traction in the year that he wrote this. The term picked up traction, kept going until 1925, where it had a really huge boost, and dropped
That's-
off for a while.
That's probably because of Freud.
Yeah.
Because Freud is kind of the pioneer of the idea of the uncanny.
Yeah.
Because that has to do with, like, that's the whole we don't dream up faces we've never seen before thing. I think it, like, that is kind of in tandem of, like, the uncanny being in our dreams is kind of what Freud was talking about, but he, like, pioneered that idea. He can't keep getting away with it.
Yeah. Something I expected to be more apparent was the rise in the use of uncanny with the creation of the Uncanny X-Men. Listen, comic books influence a lot of things, and I'm actually surprised that there wasn't that huge of a boost in it. But what is interesting is it is currently at its peak of usage.
Right now?
Yes.
Of course.
And it completely dwarfs anything else on the chart.
It's because of the conversation about AI. That's why.
Yeah.
And people also don't entirely know what uncanny means. So they misuse it sometimes.
Yeah. It picked up in 1973, and it has risen astronomically to today.
Well, that's just because of, like, the developments of psychology too.
Yeah.
Because it's a psychology thing. It has to do with what unsettles the human mind.
Yeah.
But the point about Hyde is he doesn't look right. But he looks just off enough. Uncanny is a hard thing to describe, which is exactly why he says I cannot describe him. Uncanny, it's a Freud thing. So, like, it's according to Google, the psychological experience of something as not simply mysterious but creepy, often in a strangely familiar way. It has to do usually with things that we repress when we see things that maybe we don't want to see, where we don't want to see them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Repression of trauma kind of sometimes comes into play with it. When something is just off enough to look wrong. You see it like the AI conversation, AI art. AI art creeps me the fuck out. Like, regardless of how much I hate how it's used and how it steals from artists, just AI art in general. Usually AI generated faces are insanely unsettling, and it's because of the uncanny, because they're just off enough and they're pulling from human traits that we are familiar with, but because of the placement, because of, like, the smearing and just how it's composed, it is not right. That's the best description of uncanny I can kind of come up with.
Oh.
Think of his face as being AI generated, where we recognize it as a human face, we recognize the traits on it, we recognize eyes, nose, and mouth, ears, stuff like that. But where are they placed? How, like, are they placed just off enough? And how does that freak us out, you know?
Yeah. An interesting thing that I saw show up on Twitter the other day was about how far AI generation is getting. You can now purchase the license to a person's face that is created by AI generation.
Yeah.
That is your
face.
that you have ownership of that person, quote unquote.
It's awful.
Of what is essentially a person by all standards of photography.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But that person doesn't actually exist.
Did I say how much it costs?
Like a lot of money.
$3.
$3?
Yep.
I hate it.
You can purchase the rights to a person.
A made-up human face.
For $3 from stock imaging companies.
Oh my god.
I believe there's... I didn't look enough at it, but I believe there's an influencer who is actually just a completely deep fake.
Oh, another thing that's usually uncanny that kind of plays into AI, robots.
Yeah.
Robots with, like, human faces are very uncanny. It's because of the way they move. Because you register it as a human being, but it does not move like one.
Yeah.
That's another example I can think of. It's a tough thing to talk about because it kind of gives people the heebie-jeebies. But that's kind of what's happening with Mr. Hyde here. And to make it worse, he clotheslined an 8-year-old and then he brought out a check to pay the family off, and it's in the name of Dr. Jekyll. And he had a key to what we eventually find out is like an add-on laboratory of, I don't think it's his actual house, but one of Jekyll's, like, vacation houses or something. It's something like that. It's
no,
like...
I think it's his house.
Is it? Or like a townhouse or something?
Yeah, I think it's his townhouse.
Okay.
The add-on was put in by a previous owner who was a surgeon.
Yes. But
it was an operation theater.
Yeah. But the thing that's weird is, why does he have a key to this lab? So that's the unsettling thing here, too. So they're like, he had a key, and he has it still. I saw him use it not a week ago. So they're like, I don't know who this guy is. He clotheslined an 8-year-old. He looks funny. And works with Dr. Jekyll, who's really esteemed and a well-known man in the area. And they go on their way. The thing about Mr. Utterson is that Mr. Utterson's a lawyer, and was working with Dr. Jekyll to work on his will.
Clothesline, an 8-year-old. Yeah, we've been there. Haven't we all done that?
You might have because you work with kids. I cannot say I have.
Don't think. Wait. I may have clotheslined an 8-year-old.
Thank you, Jay.
I know I've definitely done it to 4-year-olds. I've definitely clotheslined 4-year-olds.
Okay.
Just...
Alright.
They think it's a riot.
Moving into chapter 2. Excuse me. So, Utterson has Dr. Jekyll's will, working on it, and he finds out that, yup, he is friends and a benefactor to Mr. Edward Hyde, who is that man who clotheslined an 8-year-old. We find out that there's some mysterious circumstances. Jer's Googling something.
Hold on. Okay. I'm just looking at all of his credentials.
Oh, right here.
Yeah.
He's a reputable man.
Oh, damn.
But he is friends with Mr. Hyde.
Okay. So, MD is medical doctor. DCL is Doctor of Civil Law. LLD is a legum doctor. Legium doctor? I don't know. Honor is an academic degree in law or an honorary degree. And an FRS means you are a Fellow of the Royal Society. Award granted by the judge of the Royal Society of London to individuals who have made substantial contributions to the improvements of natural knowledge, including mathematics, engineering science, and medical science. So not only is he like a really strong medical doctor, but he also is a legal expert too.
He's smart.
Yeah.
So
can I mention some notable ones?
There's also, it says etc., which means he probably has more that they're not even listing.
Yeah. Isaac Newton, Faraday, Darwin, Rutherford, Albert Einstein, Winston Churchill, Alan Turing, and most recently, Stephen Hawking, David Attenborough, Elon Musk. Yeah. Includes over 280 Nobel laureates since 1900s.
Yeesh.
So that one's real prestigious.
Yeah.
So he's like...
And this is in London too, by the way. I don't know if I said that, but...
That really puts into perspective of who Jekyll is supposed to be. He's equivalent to frickin' like Elon Musk and Stephen Hawking in terms of notoriety.
Notoriety, yeah.
So he's probably one of the most famous people in London.
Yeah.
Outside of, politicians.
Yeah. And he's also not incredibly old, from my understanding, and he's already writing a will. What? You want your pumpkin spice cupcakes? Alright. So in his will he says, give all of my possessions to Mr. Hyde. But in the case of Dr. Jekyll's disappearance or unexplained absence for any period exceeding 3 calendar months, the said Edward Hyde would step into said Henry Jekyll's shoes without further delay and free from any burden or obligation beyond the payment of a few small sums to the members of the doctor's household. So not only are they friends, quote unquote, but when I die, give everything to him, and he's taking my place.
Yeah. That's very interesting. The wording of that. That he should step into his shoes without delay.
And it says disappearance or unexplained absence longer than 3 months.
Yeah.
Which does come up. That does come up later. Yeah, this is more than just, oh, they're buddies. This man is like the new me.
He's to be me when I am dead.
Yeah. So this is in his will. Dr. Lanyon.
Shout out to Dr. Lanyon.
That's my man. So he goes to Dr. Lanyon, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't entirely remember this part. I apologize.
He meets with Lanyon, and they discuss what has happened to Henry Jekyll. We had a lot of common interest. They both say they haven't seen him in a long time. Devilishly little of the man. Yeah, they're just like, I miss my friend. And it's basically setting up the fact that people haven't seen him that much.
Yeah, and they're like, have you ever heard of his protege?
Yeah.
Never heard of him. Yeah. And he's thinking of like, oh my god, like, if that person is the one who clotheslined the 8-year-old, but he's Dr. Jekyll's like protege, then why is he clotheslining 8-year-olds?
Yeah.
There's the Juggernaut description again. Child the child down and passed on regardless of her screams. There's some good description in here. And then he has the nightmare, right? He has the nightmare about Mr. Hyde.
Yeah.
About Mr. Hyde, like, he's starting to think that Mr. Hyde is, like, manipulating Dr. Jekyll and is, like, basically holding him hostage or something. And that he's manipulating Jekyll. And, like, forcing him to put him in the will. And he has a nightmare about it. Yeah, there it is. If he be Mr. Hyde, I shall be Mr. Seek.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
I love that line. Yeah, so Mr. Utterson is now determined to figure this out because he's like, Mr. Hyde is sussy and I don't like him. I've never seen this man, but from what I know, I don't think he might be the person we think he is. And so he goes to find Oh, he goes to meet Mr. Hyde, yeah. Sorry, I'm just remembering what we're doing. So he meets with Mr. Hyde in the night. And this is where we get another good description of what he looks like. Hold on, I'm just like looking. Yeah, he's like looking for him, making sure like he'll go out in the night and try and find him. And eventually he dies.
Mr. Hyde is a sussy baka.
He sure is.
Indeed. Write that on that resume. That's B.
He was small and very plainly dressed.
That is so interesting to me.
Plainly dressed.
No, the small.
Small.
Because Juggernaut, it has that very specific definition of being huge.
Yeah.
And so far, we've seen him described, it's huge. But now he is small.
He was described as small even in the beginning, too, though, I think. That he was a small man.
It's contradictory.
It is contradictory. Yeah, he catches him going into the door, into the lab. Mr. Hyde, that is my name, what do you want? I see you're going in. I'm an old friend of Dr. Jekyll's. You must have heard my name. In meeting you so conveniently, I thought you might admit me. You will not find Dr. Jekyll. He is from home. Much to think about.
He is away from home.
How do you know me? Will you do me a favor? Will you let me see your face? Mr. Hyde appeared to hesitate and then, as if upon some sudden reflection, fronted about with an air of defiance, and the pair stared at each other pretty fixedly for a few seconds. They don't describe that.
No.
Not here, they don't.
You should have my address, and gave the number of a street in Soho.
Can he too be thinking of the will? But he kept his feelings to himself and all. Yeah. By description. We have common friends. Who are they? Jekyll, for instance. He never told you. I did not think you would have lied. How does he know that?
Yeah.
Well, there's a reason why. But, interesting. I think it's here, yeah. The other snarled aloud with a savage laugh, and the next moment, with extraordinary quickness, he had unlocked the door and disappeared into the house. Passing every step and... Here it is! This is what I was thinking of. Mr. Hyde was pale and dwarvish. He gave an impression of deformity without any nameable malformation. That's the uncanny. He had a displeasing smile. He had borne himself to the lawyer with a sort of murderous mixture of timidity and boldness, and he spoke with a husky, whispering, and somewhat broken voice. All these were points against him, but not all of these together could explain the hitherto unknown disgust, loathing, and fear with which Mr. Utterson regarded him. There is something else. There is something more. If I could find a name for it, God bless me. The man seems hardly human. Something troglodytic. Can it be the old story of Dr. Fell, or is it the mere radiance of a foul soul that thus transpires through and transfigures its clay continent? The last, and I think, oh, my poor old Henry Jekyll, if I ever read Satan's signature upon a face, it is on that of your new friend. I love that description. I think if I ever read Satan's signature upon a face, it is on that of your new friend. Taking a sippy. So he goes to Jekyll's now.
Yes.
Meets with his servant. Is Dr. Jekyll at home? I will see.
Okay. Dr. Fell is a nursery rhyme. Can you scroll up to that part?
Troglodytic.
It'll be the old story of Dr. Fell. And it goes, I think, this is correct. I do not like thee, Dr. Fell, the reason why I cannot tell, but this I know and know full well, I do not like thee, Dr. Fell. It sounds very,
Sam, I am.
yeah.
Being
But it was made sometime in the 1600s.
Hmm.
And it was originally in Latin.
Interesting.
Yes. Yeah, that's it. That's all it is that little...
I do not like Sam I Am.
But it's something that people would have known.
Yes.
At the time, like how most people just know parts of Dr. Seuss.
Yeah. So he meets with Poole, who is Jekyll's
Butler.
butler. Yeah. The face of Hyde sat heavy on his memory. He felt what was rare for him: a nausea and a distaste for life. Dr. Jekyll was gone out. I saw Mr. Hyde go in by the old dissecting room. Is that right? When Dr. Jekyll is from home? Quite right. Mr. Hyde has a key. Your master seems to repose a great deal of trust in that young man. Yes, sir, he does indeed. We all have orders to obey him. So they are under Hyde too.
Yeah.
He never dines here. Indeed, we see very little of him on the side of the house. He mostly comes and goes by the laboratory.
So they don't really know him.
Yeah, but they're instructed to obey him.
Yeah.
Poor Henry. Harry.
Yeah, that's one of the interesting things. It seems that Harry is a nickname for Henry.
Huh. Harry. And this is just kind of him reflecting. This Mr. Hyde, if he were studied, must have secrets of his own. Black secrets by the look of him. Secrets compared to the which poor Jekyll's worst would be like sunshine. Hee hee.
Okay. Apparently, Harry is a nickname for Henry because it was the spoken form of Henry in medieval England.
Hmm.
So, you would write it as Henry, but you would speak it as Harry.
Interesting. Okay.
So what's a good example of something like that? That's pronounced different from how it's spelled.
Saoirse.
Yeah, Saoirse.
That's just
But
the one
over
that always
time,
comes to mind.
once reading became more popular, and there was less of that. You know how... Okay, it's the Pokemon effect. When you play Pokemon games, you have your own interpretation of how things are pronounced.
Yeah.
And so you pronounce it like that. Like you with not Gyarados. Grouthy. If you haven't heard it spoken, you don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah.
So as people were reading, they would see Henry and they would say, okay, I pronounce this as Henry.
Yeah.
But in spoken, without hearing that, they wouldn't know it's Harry.
Yeah. Chapter 3! Out of like 9 or 10.
Give us a true crime podcast where the hosts discuss gothic literature as if it were unsolved mysteries.
I don't know who Mr. Hyde is. I read this text. I'm joking. Okay, so in chapter 3, Jekyll throws a party, and this is the first time we see Jekyll. So, yeah. Utterson goes, and this is the first time we get to see Jekyll himself. He talks very, like, you know... Yeah.
Utterson, you are unfortunate in such a client. I never saw a man so distressed as you are by my will. Unless it were that hide-bound pedant Lanyon at what he called my scientific heresies. That is interesting. And we will... I was never more disappointed in any man than Lanyon. We will have to get to that.
So Utterson goes and it's like, your will's fucked up. Are you alright?
Yeah.
What'd you do? Oh.
I'm good.
So he's like, what's the deal? What's the deal? And we get this. My good Utterson, this is very good of you. This is downright good of you, and I cannot find words to thank you in. I believe you fully. I would trust you before any man alive. I before myself, if I can make the choice. But indeed it isn't what you fancy. It is not as bad as that, and just to put your good heart at rest, I will tell you one thing. The moment I choose, I can be rid of Mr. Hyde. I give you my hand upon that, and I thank you again and again. And I will add just one little word, Utterson, and I'm sure you'll take it in good part. This is a private matter, and I beg you to let it sleep. He's like, mind your business.
Yeah.
He said, stay in your lane, and it'll be fine. There's one point I should like you to understand. I have a really great interest in poor Hyde. I know you have seen him. He told me so, and I fear he was rude. But I do sincerely take a very great interest in that young man, and if I'm taken away under
Sorry.
Don't interrupt me! I do sincerely take a very great interest in that young man, and if I am taken away, Utterson, I wish you to promise me that you will bear with him and get his rights for him. I think you would if you knew all, and it would be a weight off my mind if you would promise. I can't pretend that I shall ever like him. I don't ask that. I only ask for justice. I only ask you to help him for my sake when I am no longer here. I promise. A year passes.
A year.
Chapter 4, a year passes. What the fuck? And after this year passes, Sick Dogs Cast reference,
Well, October.
oh my god, that was like the other day.
Yeah.
Year later, murder. Who did it?
Mr. Hyde.
Mr. Hyde. I forget.
What?
I just forget the circumstances of this murder. But there is a murder.
They ran into each other in the streets. What?
I'm laughing at what Name said.
They made years from Dogs Cast real.
I can't believe it.
They ran into each other in the street. Karu was planning to deliver a letter to Utterson, if I'm remembering that right. Two met in the street. Hyde killed him. They didn't much say why.
Why he killed him?
Yeah. All of a sudden, it says it right there.
Yeah.
Visitor master, conceived a dislike. He had in his hand a heavy cane, which was trifling.
Right, he beats him to death.
Yeah. Broke out in a great flame of anger, stamping his foot, brandishing cane. Beats him to death.
Yikes.
And it breaks the stick. Half of it falls in the gutter, and the other half is missing.
Forgot that. So of course they go to the police. Is this on murderer? Okay, so Hyde disappears. Victim, yeah, okay. Lays victim in the middle of the lane, incredibly mangled. The stick with which the deed had been done, although it was of some rare and very tough and heavy wood. Moxie's knocking things over. Had been broken in the middle under the stress of this incessant, sorry, I can't read, cruelty, and one splintered half had rolled into the neighboring gutter. The other, without a doubt, had been carried away by the murderer. A purse and a gold watch were found upon the victim, but no cards or papers, except a sealed and stamped envelope which he had been probably carrying to the post, which bore the name and address of Mr. Utterson. So of course they get him involved because they're like, this guy was coming, he's dead.
Yeah.
Danvers Carew.
he identified the body, so we're led to believe that the body was beaten beyond recognition.
Oh. Yeah.
And because the officer is surprised by it.
Yeah.
And Haru is stated at some point to have been part of Parliament.
Yes, I forgot that.
So it's basically a senator.
Yeah. A senator gets beaten to death, but no one can recognize him except the person he was delivering mail to.
Yeah.
Or the person he was getting mail.
Yeah. So make a deal of noise, and perhaps you can help us to the man.
Mr. Utterson had already quailed at the name of Hyde, but when the stick was laid before him, he could doubt no longer. Broken and battered as it was, he recognized it as one that he had himself presented many years before to Henry Jekyll. So, I'm presenting this as if no one in this chat knows.
Dr. Jekyll is regifting. What an asshole!
Oh my god, he's giving the murderer his murder weapon! Is this Mr. Hyde a person of small stature? Particularly small and particularly wicked looking? They describe me like that sometimes.
No.
And then he's like, I can take you to his house. Because he has both of their addresses.
Yes.
He has, Hyde's address, too. So they go to Soho, yep.
A great chocolate-colored pal lowered over heaven. That's something that was always very interesting. I haven't figured that one out, but I'll get there, right, Moxie?
She's being confused.
You wanna come sit with me? Man who made a portion in order to not feel guilty over his instincts as he had high standing. He does not want to tarnish it. He doesn't want to tarnish it.
You're exactly right. I was trying to hold off because we're not quite there yet, but you're absolutely right. So he goes to, they go to Soho.
In Greenwich Village.
Shut up!
They're in New York City now?
No!
No, they're not. They're still in London.
At the corner of Soho and Greenwich Village, I am writing a dystopian rock musical.
Anyway, I need to fix this.
No, you don't. This was the home of Henry Jekyll's favorite, of a man who was heir to $250,000 sterling! Woo-wee! So they're greeted by his, butler. He was not at home. He had been in that night very late, and he had gone away again in less than an hour. There was nothing strange in that. His habits were very irregular, and he was often absent. Of course he was. For instance, it was nearly 2 months since she had seen him till yesterday. 2 months.
Hold on.
The passage of time in this novel is important.
Okay, hold on.
What are you looking at?
So $250,000
My arm hurts.
is 25000. Oh, whatever. And this was in 1886, I believe this was written. I just want to put in perspective how much that costs. Yeah,
Lot of money.
that's $25 million. No, not dollars. That's 25 million
Pounds. That might be a little less just because of conversion rate. I think a pound is worth more than $1 if I'm... At least last I checked. I know they had... I think they had balanced
Yeah,
it
that's
out.
28. million. It's $28 million now.
$28 million.
With inflation and conversion, to £250,000 sterling is now $28 million.
And that's still, like, probably less than a fifth of what Jeffrey Bezos owns. Just to put it in perspective, that's a lot of money, though. Like...
Okay.
I have no clue what Jeffrey Bezos' net worth is, but... Hi, Moxie. That's a lot of doll heads. It sure fucking is. So they search, Hyde's house. Couple rooms. Nothing of super note, but he has a lot of nice wine, I guess.
Okay.
A gift.
So, the richest person in 1880 was William Henry Vanderbilt at $100 million. Jekyll had $28 million.
100 million, you said?
Yeah. So that's the cap. We're not in billions. That's a pretty short margin.
That's like still 1%, I imagine.
Today's exchange rate to now of 1886.
What is that worth today?
What is that worth today?
In dollars instead of pounds.
Yes, I did like 3 conversions.
That's a lot of money. Rich people problems. Yeah. So
yeah.
the rooms are
that $55 million then is equivalent to $1 billion now. So inflation was wacky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fucked up if true. So yeah, a lot of money. They start searching his rooms, and they don't find a lot of things in particular, but it's just kind of a fucking mess. They find a checkbook, which is probably the most important thing they find. A burned checkbook, which had resisted the action of the fire. The other half of the stick was found behind the door. Burned checkbook. Several £1,000s were found to be lying in the murderer's credit. So he already has a good amount of money.
Yeah. That's probably about...
Money's life to the man. We have nothing to do but to wait for him at the bank and get out the handbills.
That's over 3,000.
Excuse me.
That I calculated the exchange rate using a calculator provided by the Bank of England, so
yeah,
that's pretty accurate.
So yeah, they're gonna leave. And then this last description. This last, however, was not so easy of an accomplishment, for Mr. Hyde had numbered few familiars. Even in the master of the servant maid had only seen him twice. His family couldn't be nowhere traced. He had never been photographed, and the few who could describe him differed widely, as common observers will. Only on one point were they agreed, and that was that the haunting sense of unexpressed deformity with which the fugitive impressed his beholders.
He basically had $500,000. £500,000.
Yeah. Bless you. Bless you. Can you talk for a minute? My throat hurts.
No? I think that might have been the last one.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
So they don't find him. He just disappears.
Yes.
Utterson goes to Jekyll's. He's here this time, I think.
Yeah, I believe so, yes.
Yeah, he's here this time.
Yeah, this is when he is actually talking to people.
Yeah, so Utterson's like, your dude killed somebody.
Yeah. Jekyll basically says, I'm not gonna speak to him ever again. He's gone. I got rid of him.
It's right here.
Yeah. And I will be fine.
Looks at the camera. But yeah, he's like, I'm no longer in talks with this man. I cannot say that I care what becomes of Hyde. I am quite done with him. I was thinking of my own character, which this hateful business has rather exposed. And he has a letter.
We just have a letter. Oh, we just have a letter.
Letter was written in an odd upright hand and signed Edward Hyde. It signified briefly enough that the writer's benefactor, Dr. Jekyll, whom he had long so unworthily repaid for 1,000 generosities, need labor under no alarm for his safety, as he had means of escape in which he placed a sure dependence. The lawyer liked this letter well enough. It put a better color on the intimacy that he had looked for, and he blamed himself for some of his past suspicions. But he burned the envelope.
Yeah.
Because I thought what I was about, but it bore no postmark. The note was handed in. I wish you to judge for me entirely. I have lost confidence in myself. And then he seized with a qualm of faintness. He shut his mouth tight and nodded. He meant to murder you. You had a fine escape. I have had what is far more to the purpose.
What did the messenger look like? And Utterson asks Poole who delivered the message. Poole said nobody delivered a message. There was no letter delivered today, other than the mail. So, it is suspicious. He purged evidence. He is heretical. He continues to go on. Gets the newsletter. Keep going.
Mr. Guest.
He visits Mr. Guest, who his specialty is basically forensics. No, it's a specific forensics. It deals specifically with handwriting.
Right, yep, this is where we get
and
Where is it?
He gives the letter to Mr. Guest, who... You want to let her out?
Yeah, she's...
He hands the letter to Mr. Guest, who says, you know, whose handwriting is this? Asks for Jekyll's letter, and realizes that it is the same handwriting, just tilted. Which means that Dr. Jekyll wrote the letter.
The two hands are in many points identical, only differently sloped. Oh my god! Henry Jekyll forged for a murderer!
He basically wrote the alibi for... He basically forged an alibi.
Yeah.
Incident of Dr. Lanyon. In this one, thousands of pounds were offered in reward for...
He's not found.
Death. He never gets found. At this point, Dr. Jekyll starts talking to people again. However, he will not talk to Lanyon. The two of them are not friends anymore, apparently. And
Hey!
on Jasper's birthday,
The 8th of January is my birthday.
went to a party. Lanyon was there, and Utterson stayed behind to talk to Lanyon and found out
Oh, sorry.
that they're no longer speaking, and that Jekyll not leaving his house again.
So he was doing really good. He was like, I'm in winning era. And then he's like, I'm in flop era.
Yeah. And then, about a week or two later, Lanyon gets ill and dies. I have had a shock, and I shall never recover. It is a question of weeks. While life has been pleasant, I liked it all. Yes, sir, I used to like it. Blah, blah, blah. Jekyll is ill too. Have you seen him? Lanyon gets upset. I don't want to hear anything of him anymore. Now, it's interesting because Jekyll has already said that he has problems with Lanyon at this point.
Yeah.
But they're still kind of friends. It's like
colleagues, I guess.
I'm disappointed in him, but I will tolerate him. But now they're like, I never want to see each other again.
Do not even look at me.
Don't speak his name around me. We are three very old friends. We shall not live to make others. Nothing can be done. Ask himself. He will not see me.
Ooh.
Blah, 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 blah. Are you okay?
I have hiccups.
Maybe you should get good ups. Uppy.
Sorry.
Dark influence of Hyde had been withdrawn. Lanyon took to his bed, and he was dead within like 2-3 weeks. Gave a letter to Utterson, only to be opened upon the death of Lanyon, I believe.
Yes, so...
But then inside of that, there was another letter, and it said, "Do not open until the death of Henry."
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Henry.
I'm struggling. I'm struggling.
Then we get to the incident at the window.
Where Enfield... Ow.
Where Enfield and Utterson are on their usual weekly walk. Enfield, I think, leads him to Jekyll's house.
I at least go by it.
Yeah. And they see Dr. Jekyll in the window. They talk to him in the window.
Ow.
Are you okay? Hold on. Alright. What the fuck?
Oh.
Are you okay?
Yeah.
They meet him in the window, and then
I'm sorry. I think
they're like, "Do you want to come out for a walk?" And he's like, "No!" And slams his window and panics, and Jekyll disappears. And they're like, "Wait, something's wrong." Eventually,
well, because his eyes get all wide, and he like has like a look of fear, and he just all of us like just closes the window and goes back in.
yeah. A couple days later, Utterson's like, "I've had it. I think this is silly." And Poole shows up at his door. He's like, "Something's wrong." They go back to Jekyll's house, where they try to speak to Jekyll through the door, but it is Mr. Hyde's voice.
Yeah, so they think that Mr. Hyde has him, like captive, and that he's gonna kill him.
That Mr. Hyde is pretending to be Dr. Jekyll. The British Airways! No!
I don't think Stream can see that.
No, they can't.
I'm sorry! Well,
This was March, actually, so it was like a couple months later.
After the murder.
Yeah. No, the murder was in October. This is a couple months after the dinner party. Everybody's really excited. It's a lot of like long-winded planning, basically.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I think something's wrong.
But the thing that matters is they break because he's in the laboratory. It's locked, and they break in.
I was gonna get to that.
Yeah.
Seen him. He was tiny, and it was not him. Something's wrong. It goes on for a while.
Yeah, it's kind of a bulk, but if you can find where they break in.
They start hearing the footsteps. They are different from Henry's footsteps. They say, "We're gonna break down the door!" I'm gonna sneeze again.
Oh my god, we're a mess right now. Bless you.
They break down the door. We are fighting for our lives. What is happening?
What is happening?
Oh! They break down the door. And when they get in there, they find a body that is contorted and twitching. And it is Mr. Hyde's body. They walk through the house, and they can find no sign of Henry Jekyll. Dead or alive. They assume he is. What?
I wanted to look at that.
Oh, okay.
The part where they find him. Where is he? They drew near on tiptoe, turned on its back, and beheld the face of Edward Hyde. He was dressed in clothes far too large for him. Clothes of the doctor's bigness. The cords of his face still moved with the semblance of life, but life was quite gone. And by the crushed vial in the hand and strong smell of kernels that hung upon the air, Utterson knew that he was looking on the body of a self-destroyer. So, allegedly, it looks like Edward Hyde poisoned himself with a vial, and he is recently deceased. I wanted to talk about the vial.
Yeah.
The clothes.
Ugh.
Are you alright? We're in a mess right now, sorry, hold on. Holding my breath.
Hyde is gone. They search around, they can find no sign of him. There's just nothing. Nowhere was there any trace of Henry Jekyll, dead or alive. He must be buried here, or he has fled. They just can't find him. And that's the gist of that. Other than the fact that there is traces of salt being laid on glass saucers for some kind of experiment. It is the drug that Henry's been asking for, some kind of salt. The meth that Henry has been looking for.
That London just does not have.
London doesn't have pure meth. Maybe they should have gone to Albuquerque.
Is that where Breaking Bad takes place? Okay. Didn't know that. I've never seen it. I only know the memes about Jesse.
Yo, Walter, we should start dealing to Mr. Dr. Jekyll.
Can my hiccups please go away? No! I need peanut butter.
There's some in that bag.
I don't want your peanut butter. Anyway,
I need peanut butter. Offers you peanut butter. I don't want it.
Well, no. Anyway, where is it? Envelope! More letters! Large envelope.
A new will.
A new will, yep.
There is a new will that puts the benefactor as being Utterson. Gabriel John Utterson himself is now the benefactor of $28 million.
Yeah. In the place of Edward Hyde. He has no cause to like me. He must have raged to see himself displaced, and he has not destroyed the document. It's a brief note in the doctor's hand and dated at the top. He was alive and here this day. He cannot be disposed of in so short of a space. He must be still alive. He must have fled. And then why fled and how? And in that case, can we venture to declare this suicide? Oh.
Whoa. You must be careful.
Why don't you read it, sir? Because I fear, God forbid, I have no cause for it. And then he reads it.
And it basically says, go read what Lanyon wrote to you first, and then read my next letter that I have for you.
Yep. Your unworthy and unhappy friend, Henry Jekyll.
Yeah. There's a whole big packet that he left from, the informational pack.
It's basically the note to read the will that says to read the will. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he goes back, and this is where we get Dr. Lanyon's packet.
And this was written on the 9th of Jan.
No, 4 days ago.
Okay, yes.
The 5th of January.
Yes.
Hold on, I'm struggling.
I'm just reading it.
Oh.
Seen the man, dined with him. Yeah, this was... No, this is not the 5th of January. This is the 13th of January. The 9th of January was now 4 days ago. So it's talking about the dinner.
The letter was written on December 10th.
Yes.
With an unknown year.
Yeah. It's a non-specific year. It's just a thing that they used to do. Written by Dr. Jekyll. That basically is like, I'm going to have you go to my house, go meet with my butler Poole. He is getting a locksmith, blah blah blah. I want you to go into my laboratory and find a drawer and then bring it home. Sit in your lobby and wait for somebody to come meet you. And then I will explain. And then there's a little PS that says, I have no idea if this will actually reach you at the right time. So, whatever. Do it at your earliest convenience.
If that night passes without event, you will know that you have seen the last of Henry Jekyll.
Yeah.
Assume I am dead.
Yeah. He does all that. He gets the drawer, which is filled with... Where is it? Press marked E was unlocked. Blah, blah, blah. I found what seemed to me a simple crystalline salt of white color that we see again. The vial to which I next turned my attention might have been half full of blood red liquor, highly pungent and smelled to contain phosphorus or some volatile ether. The other ingredients I could make no guess, and there was a book with a series of dates. There were not many other things inside of that book, other than, it's a failure, or for some reason he wrote the word double.
That's just like little notes in the margins, I imagine.
So it's basically if I had a journal and I wrote nothing in it except the day and failure, and then I wrote another day, and then I wrote another day, and then I wrote another day, but they're not fully sequential. They're like days missing. And then sometimes I decide to write like, ooh baby, a triple. He does that, he goes to wait in his room, and he is met by a small man.
A small dude.
A small dude. And he's like, do you come from Dr. Jekyll? He's like, yes, I do, actually. Ah-ha-ya-ha. They go in. The guy's avoiding a policeman. The small dude is avoiding a policeman. And during this, he kind of just...
No, there's something important that happens here.
Yes, I know. Describes him once again. It is the same description of Hyde that we have seen before, wearing clothes that are too large for him. Visitor sat down. Do you have it? Do you have my methamphetamines? And he's like, dude, slow down. I don't want to give you drugs yet. Sorry, Dr. Lanyon. I come here at the insistence of your colleague, Dr. Henry Jekyll. Piece of business at the moment. And he basically is like, do you want to see some shit or no? If you want to see some shit, you're gonna see some shit. And if you don't, then you will never hear from me again. Because for some reason we really love the you will never hear from me again. And he's like, I guess I'll see some shit. Hands him a glass, he mixes a tincture, and consumes it, and begins to metamorphosize. And Mr. Hyde becomes Dr. Jekyll. His form.
Where's the description of that?
The mixture, which was at first a reddish hue, began proportion to the crystal's melted, brightening color, effervescently audible through fumes of vapor. My visitor, who had watched these metamorphoses with a keen eye, smiled, set down the glass. Oh, there, he says.
Love this line.
Yeah.
Your sight shall be blasted by a prodigy to stagger the unbelief of Satan.
Yeah.
Love the description of Satan in this novel.
He mixes it and then says, do you want to see some shit? Then consumes it. He put the glass to his lips and drank one gulp. A cry followed. He reeled, staggered, clutched at the table, and held on, staring with injected eyes, gasping with open mouth. And I looked, there came, I thought, a change. He seemed to swell. His face suddenly became black, and the features seemed to melt and alter. And the next moment I had sprung to my feet and leaped against the wall, my arms raised to shield me from that prodigy, my mind submerged in terror. Oh God, I screamed, and oh God, again and again. From there, before my eyes, pale and shaken and half fainting and groping before him with his hands, like a man restored from death, there stood Henry Jekyll. What he told me in the next hour, I cannot bring my mind to set on paper. Just tells him basically the story of it, and he's like, you suck. I'm never speaking to you again.
My life is... So he dies of shock.
Yeah, he does.
He's like, my life is done. I'm dead. I cannot do this. Die. Bye.
Reads book with friends on stream. Dun dun dun.
Alright, and now that Utterson has read this...
Why are your hiccups?
I don't know! It's not my fault!
I'm trying to help you. Let me in.
I'm trying to read!
I'm gonna go into your lungs. I'm gonna squeeze them for a second so they stop
Please
hiccuping.
don't. Alright, so now that Utterson has read Lanyon's description, he now knows that he can read...
Jekyll's letter.
So now we get... Hold on, I'm processing.
You get to Jekyll's letter, and it basically is the confession of, I made myself turbo meth, and that made me shrink down.
But this is the important part about why.
Yeah. I was gonna explain that. It made me shrink down and made me feel silly. And like, removed inhibition, basically.
Yeah.
And he took the name of Edward Hyde. He didn't specifically say why the name Edward Hyde. He talks about, I felt trapped in my life. I wanted something interesting to happen. We're gonna scroll past that word. Bundle of sticks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Found power, blah, blah, blah. I only recognize my natural body from the mere aura and effulgence and certain powers that made up my spirit, but managed to compound a drug by which these powers should be dethroned from their supremacy. Basically, I found a way to beat my conscience so that I could be...
Two people at once.
Two people. Knew well that I risked death for any drug that so potently controlled the very fortress of identity. Overdose and lose myself. Thought about it for a long time until one day he decided to do it. I think, in not so many words, he worked as a mercenary as Edward Hyde for a while, committing small crimes for people or working in a gang.
Probably,
but when he looks in the mirror, he shrinks and looks uncanny. There we go. It came about that Edward Hyde was so much smaller, slighter, and younger than Henry Jekyll. Even as good shone upon the countenance of the one, evil was written broadly and plainly on the face of the other. Evil, besides, which I must still believe to be the lethal side of man, had left on the body an imprint of deformity and decay. I became evil on the inside, and so I was evil on the outside. He really doesn't say where he got the name Edward Hyde. This, as I take it, was because all human beings, as we meet them, are commingled out of good and evil. Everybody is a mixture of good and evil, but Edward Hyde is
pure evil.
Pure evil. Which is very interesting, because honestly, he never really describes anything evil.
Well, he kills somebody.
Yeah, until then. But he kind of just, like, steals things. Maybe.
Because
he doesn't go into any crimes that he actually does.
Yeah. I think that's, like... Because the whole thing is, you know, Dreg said it earlier, of, like, I wanted to explore my instincts. Like, humans are made up of two halves, and I wanted to explore both of those things.
Yeah.
So, Edward Hyde is just a manifestation of the human ability to do evil, but I think even still, he was still kind of being held down a little bit by the goodness of Dr. Jekyll, that he... Because what happens is those 3 months, or whatever, where he's, like, doing really well, Hyde is not coming out.
Yeah.
But when Hyde does come out, he's not satiated. I think it has to do with the satiation, that the more we see him,
Yes, the very popular Jekyll is what society wants to see, and Hyde is what people put behind closed doors.
Yeah. So, the more he's out, the more satiated he is just being a little feral.
Yeah.
Like, I'll be a little feral dude on the street. But if you put me away for long enough, I'm gonna get hungry. And when I come out again, I'm gonna be real mad, you know?
But he claims that Hyde is pure evil prior to even clotheslining an 8-year-old.
Well, I think that has to do with the idea...
Yeah. He marks that as one of the most vile things that Hyde has done. So it's like, I don't know, he kind of did it by accident. He just...
It also might just have to do with, like, evil in that, like, maybe he hasn't exactly committed evil deeds yet, but he's it's the physiognomy thing. I think has a lot to do with it. If you look evil, you are evil, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And just how he like thinks and treats other people, because he's rude.
Yeah,
he's not nice. And like maybe that's not like evil, but he certainly has a what's the word I'm looking for? Like a disdain for other people, and maybe that's just a recognition of he doesn't like other people, and that might be fine for a little bit, but eventually that's gonna, and it does, you know, he kills somebody, beats someone to death beyond recognition.
Yeah. My thing is just, like, it's very interesting that he claims he's so evil before doing any of the big evils.
Yeah.
And his big evils, honestly, like, when you compare it to real people in history who have committed mass atrocities, he's not.
No, but...
He got mad and he killed a dude in the street, and he accidentally trampled an 8-year-old, and then he was like, I'll give you money if it makes you feel better, I'll pay your medical bills. Like, honestly, I'm not defending his actions, but I'm more saying there's much worse people.
But it might be the capability to do evil.
Yeah.
That... Like I was trying to say, like, he might not be doing them, that doesn't mean he doesn't think about it and isn't capable of doing it. You know, because... What can he do?
You can think of it like suppressing parts of your subconscious. The more you push one aspect of yourself, the more you alienate it, the more bigger it will get until it forces its way out.
Exactly.
Yeah. We'll keep going through this. Are your hiccups gone?
Don't say anything.
I will scare them away.
Anyway, so yeah, he's got the two sides of the whole. He's exploring, you know, dividing his kind of subconscious. He gets a house for him to, like, make it seem like they're two entirely different people.
Yeah.
He sets up an account in his name. That's the whole thing of, like...
Not at first. The account is still in Dr. Jekyll's name.
Right.
Until the point where he tramples the kid and pays for it.
Yep.
And then he's like, I didn't think about this. I'm gonna have to fix that.
He does have the house in Soho, though.
Yeah. And so at that point, he opens an account in Hyde's name. But he had done everything under the name of Jekyll so that there was no paper trail.
Yeah.
That Edward Hyde even existed.
Yeah.
But then he realized, I need a paper trail. And that's where everything goes wrong, really.
Yeah. So he has a house, he tells the servants...
Men have hired bravos to transact their crimes, while their own person and reputation sat under shelter. I was the first that ever did so for his pleasures. So yeah, he just says I was a mercenary. You know?
Yeah.
I did crimes for other people. But he doesn't go into any of them, which is what's odd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carl Jung and his psychological theories of the conscious and unconscious mind. We are getting to that in just about, like, 5 minutes here. We'll get to that. But yeah. So he basically describes it like you know, the Lanyon thing of, like, he's gonna bring me my... Because what started happening is he would start to transform without taking the potion. Where's that? Yes. Before the murder of Sir Danvers, he's, like, out, like, on a walk or something? Jared, please help me.
What?
When he transforms into Hyde without the medicine.
Yeah.
And he's, like, far away from his house. Is he, like, on a walk or something?
I think it happened when he was asleep.
No, he was out in public.
Okay.
It does happen to him at home, but
Yeah.
it starts to happen to him in public too, because it happens to him at his house at the window,
Yeah.
which is why he goes away. He all of a sudden is transforming into Hyde without meaning to, but he does it in public too.
Yeah, and he runs away.
He's far from home. It's around here.
The personality begins to collapse.
They start to
Yeah.
There's no control. They start to become one and the same.
Yeah.
That when he does feel those kind of instincts, he doesn't need the medicine to do it. It just kind of happens.
But the thing is, I believe when he's Hyde, he starts turning back to Jekyll without the medicine. He needs to take the medicine to turn back to Jekyll, but he needs it to turn into Hyde. I think the way it works.
Henry Jekyll and I had awakened Edward Hyde. How can this be explained?
I don't know. It's interesting because there is that time where he spends like 3 months as Dr. Jekyll when everything's normal. And it doesn't mention changing. And then in a little bit he mentions that I had the urge again, so I did it.
Yeah, because he stops using the medicine and it like suppresses it.
Yeah.
But then I think when he gets back on the medicine, it triggers the subconscious response.
Yeah.
And then it's like, we need this, we need to keep doing this, and he tries not to, and then it starts to collapse.
Yeah.
The power of the drug is not always equally displayed. I now felt I had to choose. My two natures had memory in common, but all other faculties were most unequally shared between them. Jekyll, now with the most sensitive apprehensions, now with a greedy gusto, projected and shared with the pleasures and adventures of Hyde. But Hyde was indifferent to Jekyll, but remembered him as the mountain bandit remembers the cavern in which he conceals himself from pursuit.
Yeah.
Jekyll had more than a father's interest. Hyde had more than a son's indifference. That's a good description.
Yeah, I love that.
To cast in my lot with Jekyll was to die to those appetites, which I had long secretly indulged and had of late begun to pamper. So he's now like, I gotta choose. I gotta be one or the other. I cannot be both. I've seen the error of my ways, but then it starts to go out of control.
Yeah.
He preferred the doctor. For 2 months, I was true to my determination. For 2 months, I led a life of such severity as I had never before attained to, and enjoyed the compensations of an approving conscience. But time began to at last to obliterate the freshness of my alarm. The praises of conscience began to grow into a thing, of course. I began to be tortured with the throes and longings, as of Hyde struggling after freedom, and at last, in an hour of moral weakness, I once again compounded and swallowed the transforming draught. And now we're fucked. Now we're fucked.
That I think is where he kills Carrie.
I believe it is, yes.
No man morally sane could have been guilty of that crime upon so pitiful a provocation. Yeah, he just did it. He just killed him.
Because it was suppressed for so long. Because the longings to be feral and evil are there. So that when he indulged in it again, he's like, I'm gonna fucking kill somebody. I'm gonna do it. I have to kill.
Some things we say may be out of order. That's just because we are trying to compound things and get the general summary of what happens.
I highly recommend reading this.
Yeah.
For yourself, at least even this last, the last chapter, if you don't want to read the whole thing, just to kind of understand where he's kind of coming from. I'll send the link again. It's relatively short, of a story, but this is the bulky part. Is this chapter?
Yes, this is where he kills Karu, and he's like, "Oh, what did I do? I should never do this again."
Thanks to the dead man, yep.
News came that the murder had been overlooked, and the guilt of Hyde was patent. So everybody knows that Hyde did it.
Yeah.
And then again, he's like, I'm not gonna do this again. This
I'm
was
better
dumb.
than this. And this was a couple months ago. And then he gets wicked sick, right?
I think he gets sick for a little bit.
But that's because it's starting to collapse.
Yeah.
Yeah, there comes an end to all things. The most... I can never say this word.
Capacious.
Capacious. Because I keep wanting to say capricious. There's no R in there. Measure is filled at last, and this breathed condensation to my evil finally destroyed the balance of my soul. January day. This might be where... Yup, this is where he transforms in public.
Yeah.
Sorry, I apologize. This is where he transforms in public.
He had it under control for a bit, and then things start to collapse.
Yep.
And I think he gets stuck that way. For a bit. And that's why he has Lanyon do all that stuff.
Because Hyde doesn't want to be seen in public.
Yeah.
Because he goes away. Once he starts to lose control, he goes to, like, basically live in, quarantine, for a bit because Hyde doesn't want to be seen. That's why he's, like, avoiding the cops, because they know he killed somebody.
Yeah.
My drugs were in one of the presses of my cabinet.
Yep.
How was I to reach them?
He gets stuck, has Lanyon bring him the stuff, and shows Lanyon. Lanyon then
dies of
shock.
And I think he realizes that I wanted to be two people. I wanted Jekyll and Hyde to be two people, but they just cannot be.
Yeah.
So in order to get rid of one, I have to get rid of both. You know, that kind of thing. That child of hell had nothing human. So, the thing with Lanyon... What's this part? I still hated and feared the thought of the brute that slept within me, and I had not, of course, forgotten the appalling dangers of the day before, but I was once more at home, in my own house, and close to my drugs. You know when you're close to your drugs. And gratitude for my escape shone so strong in my soul that it almost rivaled the brightness of hope. So what is,
We're gonna get into some interesting stuff in a minute.
Okay. I'm just trying to map out the very end of this, because I haven't read this in a long time.
He basically just locks himself in his room trying to figure things out after he gets back in the house. Has pool, keep going and getting medicine. Enjoy BioShock. There's a book or two referenced in it. One of them is Atlas Shrugged. I might own the BioShock collection, actually. But anyway, he just walks through his collapse at that point. The hatred of Hyde for Jekyll was of a different order. His terror of the gallows drove him continually to commit temporary suicide. He kept trying to kill himself. And eventually, everything catches up to him. This then is the last time, short of miracle, that Henry Jekyll is able to think his own thoughts. Yeah, at the time of writing this, it's the same day that they break into the room.
Yeah, it's that day. It's dated that day.
He's writing this, and he's like, I was able to make one little thing enough to bring myself back for a second to write this for you.
This is the very end.
Half an hour from now, when I re-undo that personality forever.
I know how I shall sit shuddering and weeping in my chair, or continue with the most strained and fear-struck ecstasy of listening. To pace up and down this room, my last earthly refuge, and give ear to every sound of menace. Will Hyde die upon the scaffold, or will he find courage to release himself at the last moment? God knows. I am careless. This is my true hour of death, and what is to follow concerns another than myself. Here then, as I lay down the pen and proceed to seal up my confession, I bring the life of that unhappy Henry Jekyll to an end. And that is the end of the novel.
Yes. Okay. Now this is where we get into some analysis. This one might be one of the longer ones we do. So, we mentioned a bit about Carl Jung's conscious and unconscious. And want to know a fun fact? This predates it. Carl Jung was not even born until 1875. So he was about 12 years old when this was written. If that. Now, Sigmund Freud was already in his 40s. However, the idea of the ego, the superego, and the id was not published until 1923. Long after, the author was dead.
Yeah.
So this predates most of the ideas that it presents that we recognize in analyzing it. Of course, the conscious and the unconscious has always existed. It goes back to, I think, Hindu belief, if I read correct. And the separation of, what you do and things like that. But honestly, I think that this relates better to the idea of the id versus the superego, and that in Jung. Yeah. Young. No, you're right. Yeah, he's Swiss. Yep, he's Swiss, so it would be Young, like Yai. I just completely glossed over that. Whoops. Carl Gustav Jung. Okay. About to bring that up. Pretty sure Freud and Jung were contemporaries, and this novel predates his work. Yeah, this predates their work. But if you look at it, the id is the idea of, it's where libido comes from, the violent and carnal human desires, and the superego is the good, as well as the, doing the right thing, and the ego is the balance between the two. That's let's figure out how to make things work together.
Yeah.
So essentially what the tincture did is it breaks down the ego and leaves shrimp. It
Oh my god, guys, there is no more conscious, there is no more subconscious, no psychology, there is only shrimp. Holy shit. I can't believe your ADHD is that fucking bad. Oh my god. It's only shrimp.
It breaks down the ego, and there's only shrimp. I like how I paused, and I was thinking the word shrimp, and
I saw you start to look at the shrimp tank, and I'm like, oh no, I knew you were gonna fucking say some bullshit in the middle of your thought. Like your ADHD ass was gonna come out right in full display. I knew it. I saw your eyes drift towards the tank, and I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ, this is gonna happen.
That definitely happened in slow motion.
It did.
It's the tincture is the breakdown of the ego. So all that's left is the id, which is Hyde, and the superego, which is Jekyll, basically.
Yes. But he doesn't understand that. I think he's trying to balance the two with, like, not with the ego, but, like, as separate entities.
Yeah.
And that's where the collapse starts to come in.
Yeah. The tincture just... I don't think there was any going back after having that, because he completely destroyed his ego, leaving just the two halves with no middle ground.
There's a part, I think it's at the beginning of this, where he talks about, like, the nature of the human mind.
Yeah, he does. And it sounds so much like the idea of the ego, the id, and the superego.
But without the third.
Yeah.
I believe it's at the beginning.
He essentially represented, prior to the tincture, the ego.
Yeah, he's under a lot of, like...
It does fit into the third, but only when you, like, read through it that way.
Yeah.
So that it's not something that would have been picked up or deliberately written, which is very interesting. It's one of those things that changes over time.
I found it hard to reconcile with my imperious desire to carry my head high and wear a more than commonly grave countenance before the public. Hence it came that I concealed my pleasures, and when I reached years of reflection and began to look round me and take stock of my progress and position in the world, I stood already committed to a profound duplicity of life.
Yeah.
So he's like, I'm in this position, how can I leave it?
Yeah.
You know?
Somewhere in there, he mentions specifically
I was
that...
in no sense a hypocrite. Both sides of me were in dead earnest. I was no more myself when I laid aside restraint and plunged in shame.
Yeah, the way that he writes it really sounds like the devil and the angel on the shoulder.
It is, yeah.
And he is in the middle. That's where the idea of the third comes from.
You have to be your own kind of balance,
yeah.
Sort of thing, you know?
But he breaks that down when he consumes the tincture.
That's a good word. Where did you get that word from? Tincture?
Tincture.
I've never heard that.
Oh, I love it.
Tincture?
Yeah.
Is that like another word for like potion? Or...
Yeah.
Wow! I'm an English major.
Tincture.
Love that word.
I specifically know it from like fucking alchemy and all that shit.
Okay. Okay, Odysseus. Anyway,
Jasper, are you telling me you're an English mate? You've never encountered tincture?
I can't say I have.
I'm eating a knife.
Please don't. So yeah, he's experimenting with what is one without the other. How can I be both, but also only one at the same time?
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
During this part, he talks about how, as Hyde, he'll commit immoral acts, but then, as Jekyll, he goes out of his way...
Vague
immoral acts. He goes out of his way to make up for what he did. I'm just chewing on a pocket knife. Not the knife, just the red. But he talks about how he goes out of his way to fix things and make things right so that people won't know what he did. Tincture, which is a type of bell. No, tincture. But yeah, that's why I think that I honestly think we can't say for sure because we're not fucking Sigmund Freud, but I do think that...
Thank God!
I do think that, I mean, he would have been around 40 years old at the time of that this was written. They honestly were born around the same time.
Freud and
Stevenson.
Stevenson? Oh, yeah.
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 But Freud didn't come up with this idea until well into his life.
Was his idea on the uncanny out by this point?
Give me a second.
Because when did he write his stuff about, like, dreams? Because that's another thing that, like, not just this one in particular, but it's in Frankenstein too, like, the dreams being reflective.
This predates the uncanny.
Damn, okay. Is that, like, around the same time as the...
1919.
Oh, that's later, then.
Yep.
Okay. Wow,
Well,
okay.
The ego, the id, is 1923.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
Freud's theory of personality. 1923, 1949. What about theory of unconscious?
Our music stopped.
Oh yeah, it's been that long.
Like, it's really quiet. Damn.
Shit.
There it is.
Yeah. Oh.
This part. The two natures that contended in the field of my consciousness, there's that word. Even if I rightly be said to be either, it was only because I was radically both. And from an early date, even before the course of my scientific discoveries had begun to suggest the most naked possibility of such a miracle, I had learned to dwell with pleasure as a beloved daydream on the thought of the separation of these elements. By God, there's two of them. Jared, can I be honest with you?
Yeah.
I have to really go to the bathroom.
Okay.
Can I go?
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, I'm just like looking at things. This is so deep into modern psychology. However, it predates most of the concepts of modern psychology. Let's see what we can find. Prehistory of psychology. So, there's Locke and Thomas Reid, who are, you know, kind of dumb. Helmholtz would be around at this time. Measured the speed of neural impulse and explored physiology of hearing and vision. So no, this doesn't have anything to do with that. Physical reality... Psychological reality and physical reality, the two are not identical. It's not a new idea. Philosopher John Locke had written extensively about the topic in the 19th century. What did John Locke specifically say? Did it say? Empiricism, the idea that all knowledge comes from existence. Role of human observer and the primacy of senses in defining how the mind comes to acquire knowledge. So they're all about how you acquire knowledge and things like that. Psychophysics. Weber and Fechner introduce methods of measuring the relationship between physical stimuli and human perception. Wilhelm Wundt helped to establish the field of experimental psychology by serving as a strong promoter the idea that psychology could be experimental field and by providing classes, textbooks, and a laboratory. In 1975, he joined the faculty at the University of Leipzig. So the creation of experimental psychology didn't exist until 1879. So there were no like experiments on any of this.
Yeah.
This is
because human mind's scary.
and it's very interesting because honestly, I believe that What's his name? Stevenson.
Robert Louis Stevenson?
Okay. Robert Louis Stevenson. Let me look at the Encyclopedia Britannica again to get the time.
Me.
Lobotomy.
Yeah, lobotomies existed.
He was in Scotland at the time. When did he live in Samoa? He was in Scotland in... Yeah, he just, like, wasn't staying in one place at the time. So it's interesting that he has so many of these insights. Okay. Wundt started looking into the elements of the consciousness in 1879. So it's just at the dawn of these ideas in psychology, other than like the ideas that lie in religion and things like that.
Yeah.
Which very much predate this, but they're not really recognized as psychology. Wundt's version of psychology arrived in America. Edward Titchener. But he was born in 1867, so he would have been 20 years old. Came up with structuralism. Interest in the contents of the mind. Adult mind was the proper focus of new psychology. Experimental psychology spread rather quickly through North America. 1900, there were 40 laboratories. So this is before there were really even laboratories. The American Psychological Association was 1892, so this predates the American Psychological Association.
Yes.
Society... Nope. That was 1904, is the Society of Experimental Psychologists. So yeah, like, honestly, most of the modern psychologists were children when this was written.
Yeah.
They were about 12 to 17 years old, with the exception of Freud, who was already a 40-year-old dude. William James, functionalism. There might be something here. Conscious is ongoing and continuous. Conscious helped us adapt to our environments in such a way. Yeah, he probably would have heard some of it from him if he did, but
I
still.
feel like that still doesn't entirely line up.
Yeah.
Because this is really like Freudian stuff.
Yeah. It fits very much with the Freudian ideas.
It's not too unrealistic to believe that these stories like these probably influence psychological research that we might find in modern science.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My wonder is, did Sigmund Freud read Jekyll and Hyde and come up with his idea of the ego, the id, and the superego?
I wouldn't be shocked if he's right. I wouldn't say it would probably be the entire basis
Yeah.
of that kind of belief, but to be like, alright, this thing is kind of being looked at
Yeah.
by others in a way that hasn't been explored before.
Yeah. Just my thought is that, you know, he probably saw it and started to get his ideas from there. What did he do prior to that? He was 83 when he died. He married in 1886, the year that this came out.
Hmm.
What's interesting, though, is Stevenson is not even listed as one of the influences on Sigmund Freud's work. but Shakespeare is.
Shakespeare, really?
Yeah.
I mean, I see it. I'm just wondering what work.
Yeah.
There's a couple. Not Macbeth. Hamlet, probably.
He qualified as a doctor of medicine in 1881.
Right, because of the whole fucking...
Yep.
Hamlet because of the Oedipus stuff.
Yeah. In similar notation, there's quite a few research out there using criminology, sociology, the lens of analyzing comic books. Not a film. Interesting.
Much to think about.
But yeah, he became a doctor of neuropathy in 1885.
Can I share a fun fact about Sigmund Freud?
Yes.
Contrary to a lot of belief, he did not consider homosexuality to be an illness.
Yeah.
A lot of people think he said that. He never actually said that. I read a letter that he wrote to a mother who was concerned that her son might be gay, and if I'm remembering it right, he basically was like, he's fine.
Yeah.
It's just interesting because we kind of get this certain kind of expectation, I guess. I don't know. It was something to that effect, but it was surprisingly supportive. I think is the thing.
Yeah, he was a doctor. But when this was being written, he wasn't even a psychologist. He didn't get into there's a whole section called cocaine. Okay.
Cocaine.
The unconscious. Let's see. 1915. No, it predates most of the ideas of the conscious and the subconscious, with the exception of, I think it was William James. My son is gay, that's wrong. He's like, no, ma'am.
Yeah, I mean, he basically was like, just let him be.
Yeah,
You're
so...
good. Relax.
Jekyll and Hyde gets into a lot of our modern psychology ideas predating the concept of modern psychology.
Just kind of on that topic, kind of not. I'm not in psychology classes. My understanding is that they don't really teach Freud anymore.
Yeah, from what I know.
They teach like more modern psychology.
Yeah.
They don't, because I learned about Freud in high school.
Freud's dumb.
Like psych classes. Freud, yes, I agree.
I mean, his contributions were very important to lead to what we know today, but now we know today that Freud was dumb.
Yes.
And he was like, you have a coughing fit, you're hysterical.
I just find that so interesting because, like, in, like, the high school I was, like, a freshman or sophomore or whatever. My sophomore psych class in high school, it was, like, Freud. That's kind of all we did, you know? And from what I've heard of, like, people in, like, my classes at school who are in psych classes or whatever, it seems like they don't even really talk about him.
Yeah.
Which is weird. To me, only because you're kind of taught he's this giant figure and, like, the pioneer of this field or whatever, you know?
Really? He was just a weirdo.
No, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's just a weird development.
Yeah.
In retrospect, because of how, like, huge his studies were for a long time.
Yeah.
And now it's just like, yeah, he's the dude that wanted to
bang his mom.
And did cocaine.
Alright, are there any other questions? Or do we feel good for this episode?
This was fun to talk about.
Yeah.
Sorry about the hiccups and the sneezing. But this is a really good text. I don't like it as much as I like Frankenstein, but this is a really good piece of Gothic lit.
Yeah.
If anyone's looking for a shorter read for, you know, the end of October, for end of spooky season, this is a great one. This one is also bastardized by media because we get the guy transforms himself into a monster, which, you know, there's truth to that,
Yeah.
but they don't get into the why and the the circumstances
Yeah.
of it, you know?
Like, honestly, Marvel's version is pretty similar to, I mean, the Juggernaut side, and it's the same kind of drug kind of thing. And it's not that far off. To be fair, he also does pick up the name because of that. He picks up the aliases because of this, but they don't get into, like, the thought philosophy of it.
Yeah. Good text.
Yeah.
Good text. As long as nobody has any other questions, I think we'll call it here. Next week is a biggie.
Yeah.
Next week is the biggie. It's the last one of October. We're gonna be doing Goethe's Faust versus Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus. I'm gonna be your expert on Dr. Faustus, whereas Jared's gonna be your expert on Faust, and we're gonna do some comparing and contrasting. And that'll be fun. Dr. Faustus is one of my favorite, probably, pieces of literature, honestly. I love Dr. Faustus.
Yeah.
So that's next week. But I think we're good today. Jekyll and Hyde has a lot of out there modern influences. Some see it as allegorical to certain mental health conditions. The story touches a lot of people. Yes, it very much so. It's a very good one. We're gonna go raid Gillian Soul.
Yes.
All right. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We're gonna do a Splatoon 3 night tomorrow. There's probably gonna be another Jer and Jade stream this week, and then we have Faustus next week. Thank you guys for joining us, and have a good day. Goodbye.
Bye.